Hi everybody, Reinhardt here, just showing you how to break apart percents to do some estimation. This is lesson 6.2. So we're going to start by doing 10% of a number. 10% of another is a super easy way to do mental math. All you have to do is move the decimal one place value to the left. So if you're finding 10% of 80, you just take the decimal and move one spot in. So 10% of 80 is the same as 8. 10% of 125, same thing, you put the decimal where it is, and then you move it in one place value to the left, and 10% of 125 is the same as 12.5. Pause the video and try to find 10% of 3,290. Did you say 329? Because you moved in one spot to the left? You're all good. Now let's say you needed to find 20% of a number. Well, you could break 20% into two groups of 10%, because 10% plus 10% is the same as 20. If you added 10 and 10, you would get 20. So you can make this even easier by creating groups of 10. 10% of 85 is the same as 8.5 or 8.5. If you have two groups to be 20%, you'd have two groups of 8.5. So if you added 8.5 and 8.5 together, 20% of 85 is the same as 17. Now 5% of the number can also come in handy if you're trying to figure out tips like 15%. 5% is just half of 10. So 5% is the same as half of 10, and 10% of 40. You just move the decimal in one spot to the left, so that's equal to 4. So 5% is half of that. So 5% of 40 is half of 4, or you just divide it by 2. So 5% of 40 is the same as 2. If you want to break apart 25% of the number, you can rewrite 25% as 10% plus 10% plus 5%. And 10% of a number is the easiest math to do, because all you have to do is deal with the decimal. 10% of 320 is 32. So if 10% is the same as 32, another 10% would be 32 as well. And then 5% is half of 32. So if you want to think of what half of 32 is, you just take 32 and divide it by 2 to get 16. So if you added up 32, 32, and 16, you would get the sum of 80. So 80 is 25% of 320, and that was how you would show your mental math. Real life application, if you come to a bill at a restaurant and it's $37.95, it's not a perfect world, you're not going to have perfect numbers to deal with. Whenever you're dealing with a bill, you usually want to round up. So let's take this $37.95 and make it to be about 40. So you want to make sure you have enough money to cover the bill. And if your service is really poor, you want to leave a lower tip. Usually the gratuity rate is 15%. So 15% is what is the most common. So 15% is the same as 10% plus 5%. So if you wanted to take $40 and find 10% of it, you move the decimal in one spot to get $4. And then half of that would be 5%. So half of 4 is the same as $2. So 15% of 40, you'd add together $4 and $2 to get a tip of $6 to leave 15% gratuity. Now let's say you had really great service or a better than average service and you want to leave a 20% tip. 20% tip of $40 would be 10% plus 10%. We already determined that 10% was $4 up here, so I just have to add 4 and 4 to get a 20% tip, which would equal $8. Let's say there's an item you want on sale for 20% off. If it's originally $110, you can find the discount by taking 20% of 110, which would be two groups of 10%. 10%, you just move the decimal in one spot. So 10% of 110 is $11. So 20% would be 11 plus 11. You'd have a discount of $22. You would save $22 on a sale at 20% if the original was $110. Just want to say thanks for being here, and if you have any more questions, please make sure you ask. There is a game on my Week at a Glance called Ice Ice Baby. It's a penguin game. Try your mental math estimation there, or you could also get the sheet from the door for some more practice. Thanks, guys.